It's nice to see everybody. It's a big group. This is what we call Progress. My name is Bobby Hackett. I work at the Bonner Foundation, where I've been for 31 years. Maybe close to 7 years ago, I met Scott and learned about his model and said, we've got to spread that model. So we've been sort of working together to spread an experiential model of teaching social action. And we're trying different things. And one of them is to have these meetups. So new people can sort of learn a little bit about it, but also, very importantly, people who are actually actively teaching it can share what they're doing and share the challenges, share the joys, and also ask and answer questions. As the group gets bigger, we want to make sure we can get through everything. So we have an agenda. It starts with just a quick introduction, so that your name, your school, if you're teaching it this semester, that you're doing that, or you have, or you're hope to in the future. It's just kind of your status in terms of this kind of work. We'll do that real quick, and then we'll at that point we'll know how many people are currently teaching, and we'll ask you to hear a little bit about how those courses are going. We'll also, and then people can ask questions. Sort of new folks can ask questions or that kind of thing. Because of the size, we probably will break up in small groups and do a little sharing that way as well. And we use a mural board to help us, give a little bit of structure and to share resources. So I'll share that here in a minute. But Scott, why don't you, if you've got the list of everybody, not everybody's showing their face, so we have to look at the sort of participant list, but if we can go around the room and share just real short introduction. And I'll go ahead and do it. I'll just call names as I see them on the participant list. If your screen isn't showing, just show your face while you introduce yourself, and then you can hide again if you choose to. So Scott, why don't we introduce you? You introduce yourself, and then I'll pick up from there.
So I'm Scott Myers-Lipton. I was for 24 years a professor at San Jose State University. I just recently retired, really to do this work of trying to mainstream. 24 years I was at San Jose State, which the most famous thing you should know about San Jose State is the home of Tommy Smith and John Carlos, who raised their fist 24 years ago in Mexico City. So there's a long tradition of social action. So have been working on this class for almost 20 years and looking forward to seeing how you can teach it and how we can mainstream it across the country.
Great. So I'm just going to go by the names on the list because not everybody's showing. So, well, let's start with Laura, Surrey, and then Jazz.
Okay, sure. My name is Laura Napier. I teach in the Stamp School of Art and Design at the University of Michigan, and I am looking into proposing a course after the conference seminar thingy in October. So the course wouldn't run probably until next fall if it went.
Great. Surrey, am I saying your name right?
No, you're doing wonderful. Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you all. My name is Surrey Miranda. I am the director of campus and community engagement at Fordham University with the Center for Community Engaged Learning. I teach, but not necessarily at Fordham. But the intention for this course is specifically to develop a leadership training. We did test out an iteration of it this last summer, but we are genuinely looking to create a more developed iteration of it.
Y'all, I'm Jazz Statham. I am at the University of Vermont in Human Development and Family Science. This is my first time teaching a social justice course. I had proposed it and then luckily had found out about Scott's program. And so I'm in the beginning stages of teaching it for the first time now.
Fantastic. Okay, we may not be able to do all of these, but let's just do a little bit more. Tom, Karen, and Chris.
Okay, I tried the space button, but I guess the first time you have to use the mouse. Yeah, I'm Tom Wasmer. I'm close to the US, but in rural Michigan, close to the Ohio border in Siena Heights University. I'm a biology professor, mainly STEM courses, but since a few years, I teach Justice and Peace, which is one of our liberal arts courses we offer. And I think it would, the method of teaching students to actually run campaigns would fit fantastic in it. Our current structure does not allow for it, so we will see what happens. But our coordinator for these liberal arts courses told me, at least, he would join the winter course, and then we would be two at our small college to try this out.
Okay, I'm going to pause there, Karen. If you don't mind for just for a second, we have more people here than we anticipated, which is actually which is very good. I'm going to make 6 breakout rooms randomly, automatically assigned. Do your introductions there, but before you go, I'm going to share in the chat, and I'm going to show you how it works. I'm going to share in the chat a link to our mural board. So go there now, click on that link. We'll just pause here for a second while you do that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and show you what I need you to do. And there's 2 ways to do it. So if you're getting yourself in there, you'll be able to see. And we're not going to do a big mural board training here. We just want to sort of, those of you who can sort of feel comfortable in there, this is one option real quick. So the mural board is a massive whiteboard. If you have a trackpad, you can just do the normal zoom and zoom out. On the left here are some of the upcoming meetups, including today's. The rest of it is a bunch of resources that we have to share. We've been using this in various meetings. So that'll just be something for you to look at. But what I want you to do is either in the chat, which may be easier for most of you, type a question you have. And if you're teaching a class, also let us know that. And then here on the mural board, right here on the right, you could, to create a sticky note, you literally just double click and you get a note. Type a question there or put it in the chat. So I'm going to break you into groups. You're going to do your introductions there. We'll take about 10 minutes. Everybody has a chance to really say something. And then you can come in here or on the chat and put your question. If you put the question in the chat, I'll drag it over here. And then we'll look at them real quick and we'll sort of group them and try to get some of those answered. Does that work for everybody? Excellent. Okay. So I'm going to stop the share now. I'm going to create the groups. So break into groups, do your introductions there. There'll be 4 people per room. There you go. Well, welcome back. So I'm going to, you know, that show of hands thing you can do. So can we do a quick show of hands? How many people, or maybe it's a poll. Let me do a poll. Well, I'm going to do a poll. How many people are currently teaching a class on social action? So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 that I can see. Okay. And how many are signed up for one of the upcoming institutes, either the in-person one in Michigan or the one in the winter? So another 1, 2, 3, 4. Awesome. 5. Awesome. Okay. So what we thought we would do is there are a bunch of questions being asked on the mural board. And I began to categorize them a little bit. And I thought we'd just take a couple minutes. Those who are teaching a class right now, I just have like 3 basic questions rather than cover everything about the course, because that'll take the rest of the time. One is, what's the name of your course? Well, like what department? What's the course about? This is briefly. How many students in it? And if you have campaigns already formed so far, what are they? So name, department, name of the course, the basic thrust of what it's about, a couple of sentences, and then if there are any, how many students in it, how many campaigns are going. So who wants to go first in terms of, just use the hand raise. So Chris, you want to go first?
Sure. I'm a sociologist. The course is a pre-existing course called Social Justice and Social Change. It is a weird hybrid course in that I teach at a very small college from a Mennonite college, and I teach right now. We have 10 students across 3 institutions taught on Zoom. We just issued decisions in the groups this week, and they include a curricular issue with a wellness course for first years and worries about sort of how they teach the calorie counting issue. Another one about student mental health provision, especially for athletes. And then another one about a student resource center for physical stuff primarily, like for food, like if utilizing food banks as well as the menstrual products and other stuff like that.
Nice. And how many students involved?
10.
10.
10? Okay, wonderful. Who else is teaching? Teresa? Or is it Teresa?
Teresa or Teresa, who,
Okay,
whichever is
yeah.
comfortable with language. Yeah, I'm putting in the chat. We're finalizing campaigns next week. I teach the social issues in higher education course at Weber State University in Ogden, Utah. This is my first year teaching this course. Folks who are on this call with Weber State actually have taught this course longer than me. This is the first time social action component has been embedded into the course. There are 14 students, and it really looks at the dimensions of social justice concepts and identities and how they intersect with the institutions of especially higher education. We are getting pretty close on finalizing campaigns and then demands and who they're going to be speaking with. So we're getting closer to that.
Yep, wonderful. Thank you. And those who are new, what you heard for the first example, the campaigns sometimes are focused on the institution itself. In Scott's case, it was a little bit more than half of the campaigns. Some are outwardly focused on some issue that students are involved in, or it impacts them usually. Sometimes they're a student wing of a community-based campaign. But so Teresa, and yours, do you have a sense that they're going to be, focused on the institution or outward or some combination?
Yeah, the students are in a program that is specifically for students who are developmental math, developmental English. We're an open enrollment institution. So these are a cohort of students who are set up for different classes, and it's a learning community. And so I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. So we're going to be focusing on the campus and what exists, and I'm helping them along with that.
Excellent, excellent. Tom?
Yeah, I think I've already talked to the forum before. The class that I was thinking originally to use this approach is an online course right now, and it's called Justice and Peace, and it's really about these big concepts. And with my interest in the environment, I'm kind of focused it on environmental issues, and hand the presentations partially over to students that they actually present documentary films that they choose to different topics. And in the online format, they also have to run the discussion board on those weeks. But it doesn't really have a practical component. But
Okay.
I think that
I think Tom, you've signed up for one of the institutes, right?
yes,
Yeah.
in October, in
Great,
person.
great. Thank you.
So
And Jazz, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, no, I'm good. Thank you.
Jazz?
Hey, I didn't catch all of what you asked, so I'm going to try to cover.
Well, yeah. So
Uh,
the course, the department, how many students, and if there's campaigns, what they might be so
Okay.
far.
So the course is Social Justice, Action, Advocacy, and Change. It is in Human Development and Family Sciences. It came out of a need because we saw that our students in internship didn't quite know how to take action and push for change. There are 15 students in the class right now. It's going okay, but we had a little bit of a rough week because it's a once a week class, and a huge heat advisory came through Vermont, and they were not equipped for it. So we didn't get to really meet on Tuesday when we were hoping to finalize the campaigns, but hopefully by next week it will be finalized. What they're working on so far and what they kind of grouped into was specifically targeting or bringing more awareness around the pro-life birthing centers that kind of trick people into coming there. The housing issues around over-enrollment when there's not places for students to actually live, so then they're crammed in 3 in a dorm. And then one was looking for kind of starting a safe rides program similar to what exists on other campuses. And then the last one was access to nature, so Catamount in nature. And so just bringing about more awareness and more direct involvement from the campus into the community for students in that way.
Nice.
So that's what they selected.
How many students?
15.
15. Excellent. Excellent. Anybody else wants to add in terms of what they're teaching right now? Okay, Scott, I'm going to hand it over to you, Scott. I'm going to pull up the screen share on my screen for a second, but we've got a series of questions, and it'd be interesting just to sort of work through them a little bit. Scott, both your thoughts, and then we can also take some thoughts from the group, and maybe start, Scott, up here on the left here.
Yeah, actually, I want to start with the one down. What surprised you? Because that's a pretty nitty gritty. So like this, I would be interested to hear from Jazz and maybe Chris, and Teresa, like what has surprised you so far in teaching, or kind of like, interesting insights as you've, gone through the training, put together the class, and now starting to do it. Like what's been interesting / surprising to you? That would be helpful to hear. Any one of those go?
I think for me, it's related to, the students who brought up this curricular issue, that I mentioned briefly earlier. And then I started thinking, what the heck happens if they just get asked to join a committee? Then how does one do, and I don't know how to look forward. So I was sort of like, we were just talking about this yesterday in class, and I was like, not sure how to do that. So that was sort of interesting. I thought I had like all this sort of, tactics we could think about doing, but are they being co-opted, or is that actually an access to power? I guess it kind of depends, right? Right? You go to the committee and the work never ends, and maybe you never get what you want.
Well, I'd like to address that because we've had that happen. So we talk about inside-outside strategy, and so there's no problem about going inside, but that doesn't stop the outside pressure to raise the issues and direct energy to the target about getting it. So a student can accept that and be a member of a committee, but that doesn't mean that the larger group or the team is going to stop promoting the issue and outside. So I would say do both if you can. It's an awesome place to have someone on a committee, but a lot of times it's an attempt to co-opt. So, or to tamp down on the energy of the students. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think,
Anyone else?
I think that, so like I said, we haven't really gotten to meet too much, but something that didn't necessarily shock me, but annoyed me, I would say, especially coming from a university that is committed to justice, in a department that's committed to justice, is that after I posted the syllabus, 3 students dropped, like immediately. They didn't come to class. So, but 2 more students joined, so that was really exciting. I think what is unique about teaching this right now is that this cohort of students have, not primarily, but partially been educated through Zoom and online resources. And so they are much more anxious about about public speaking than they may have been if they didn't have that experience. And so I'm not necessarily shocked by that, but I'm trying to figure out ways I can help motivate them grow in that area.
Awesome. Teresa, do you want to add that?
Yeah, so I was shocked that my program that gave me this course didn't tell them that there was a social action component to it. So they were shocked day one. And their terrified looks on their face when we talked about what was going to be included in the course was a little surprising to me. But then as we got into conversation and talked about power and agency and really them leading with me supporting, it really became this fun transition with their mindset and kind of approach to how they were going to go about figuring out what exists, what they were going to tackle, and how they're going to do it. So it surprised me with how excited they actually became and how quickly they became excited. And Jazz, I didn't experience the drop part of it. They've all come to class early, which has been also exciting because then we start on time and we get going. So that's been fun.
Interesting. I want to address the question and have you all speak, the ones that are teaching it. What civic action campaigns can I suggest? And I would just say just what I did always was bring in community organizations. And maybe you could say about it, if you did that in your classes, the 3 that are doing it right now. I brought in civic organizations that were doing campaigns. And there were times where if they had no ideas, I asked them what issues they would want to change. So there would be some brainstorming about that. And so we got that. And every once in a while, if there was something going on the campus, I would say, hey, do you know about X, Y, and Z? And that could be everything from, I'm trying to think of things that I've said. One time there was on the Equal Opportunity Program, I'd been to a meeting where our EOP program, which was for first generation students, had been cut to 0. And I said, hey, I was in a meeting recently, a faculty meeting, I heard about this. Is that something of interest? And a group of students took that on, and they actually won that campaign and brought back our EOP program for first gen students. So if you're hearing things about what's going on campus, I think it's fine to say, not that I would always say to them, and this gets to the point of, we talked about in our little group, like to not be where we're dictating what the students should do, but rather just offering ideas and suggestions, and whatever they choose is up to them. But maybe Teresa and others who are teaching could say, like, how did you handle that part of the suggesting to students?
I can go if
Oh.
I pulled up like the school newspaper and I said, what are students writing about right now? And because these are brand new students, and so to throw the kitchen sink at them was not going to be helpful. So I just gave a simple resource that they could easily access just to see what was being talked about right now. And they actually want to talk about parking. And so I said, okay, but it's just diving into like what social issue exists there? What is the policy? So it's just kind of, if they have that interest, I can't say no, or I choose not to say no. And we dive into the whys and the nitty gritty and getting into, so that's kind of been, if that's their interest, then how do I support it as it relates to the class and the social action component?
Awesome. Do you want to say the other 2 they're teaching? Chris?
Because of the geographical particularities of teaching this hybridized course across 3 campuses, I decided not to do it, because it was just a lot of logistical work to try to coordinate that across 3 campuses. My colleague does it locally here at this campus with only residential students, and I've actually spoken there. I think that would be preferred, but just given the logistics of all that, I passed on it. And so students seem to come up with plenty of stuff we sort of brainstormed a list very first day. I'd warned them ahead of time, and we had a good solid list with a lot of diversity.
Awesome. And Jazz?
So being new to this area, this was also something I was pretty nervous about. I did some initial digging to see what campaigns already existed within the area. And then we have like a student advisory board that take on some initiatives within the college. So I'd invited them to come present on some things they had been working on. A lot of the people who I had initially invited couldn't make the time on during our meeting. But then we just opened a mural board and they did a group brainstorm activity, just listening to different things that they've seen issues with while on campus. And then they spent this last week kind of narrowing that down more. So they had more knowledge about, I think, the college as a community than I was able to like just give them for Trinity School. These are students who are juniors and seniors, and so they have more experience within the college.
Awesome. So just looking at the questions, how flexible is the green question on the right? How flexible is the course design? To say it's absolutely flexible. The social action part really takes 40 to 50%, and you could teach the other 50% like in art education and history and so forth. So absolutely, it's flexible for that. I want to say, how does it translate? How can we translate this work in more lecture style courses, STEM? So, a STEM person would have to answer that, but I talked to two STEM people yesterday from two colleges, and they're attempting to do that. So I think their challenges, they were from junior colleges, and it's very constricted of what they can teach. So they're trying to maybe co-teach it with, there's classes at their universities where they can co-teach it with a social science course. So they're looking to do that to make it so they can still teach their STEM stuff as well as do something more on the action side. But that's a question I think we're working on answering. How do we translate civic actions identity across disciplines? How do we translate civic actions? I think the power of this model is it's being taught across disciplines, right? So I think that's the power, that it's all these majors that can teach it. This question about where can we locate a repository of resources? Maybe, Bobby, that's a question for you, but finding sources with different perspectives, not just white male. If you look at the books and resources, Bobby, maybe click on yours since yours is the one that's up there, and click books and resources. People have been putting those ideas up and we have them listed. Can you do that, Bobby?
Yeah.
Yeah. Books and resources. And if you zero in on that, there's the book on contemporary Asian American activism. That book on Stir It Up was really has a huge focus on folks of color. My book as well, where my students are, this book here on Change, A Guide to Student Social Action, those resources. And a lot of those resources, Bobby, could you click on the one where it's just so everyone sees it, which is the Bonner link on all the resources that we have up.
Sure. So if you go to these things, there's a link here open, that'll take you right to the source for books, and they're not always there. We don't always have a link. We often just have images, but if you see that link there, it'll take you to right there. You put your mouse over it and the open button will show up.
And that one on Bonner, which has a lot of what I did was I taught over almost 20 years, and I had students reflect on their process and the things they learned, and they're under certain sections within that reading. Do you want to pull that up, Bobby, so people have it and we could pop it in here? It's on the Bonner doc for courses.
Sure.
And the important part about that is it's right there. And if you click on reference docs.
Yeah, so just so you guys know, this is Scott's the last course he taught. And then to help his class, but also to share this with other folks, we took his readings and put them on the Bonner website. So there's another place you can get his course, the books, his syllabus, some other documents, and then all the readings he's put together. And those students, many of which are students of color, are reflecting on their identity as they're working on it, on their class. So I think those are helpful too. So totally agree that, to have a very wide diversity of reading. Anyone else want to look at those questions and, either ask them or respond to them? As you look through those, maybe pull up those questions again, Bobby. Yeah.
And I'll just pop here so everyone just has easy access to that board. Here's the board there if you just want to click on there.
Oh, a second. There we go. Where are they? Where are my questions? I've lost them.
There
There
they
they
are.
are.
Bobby, you want to address maybe that one on, they're asking about
Finding resources.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a handful of places. This mural board is one. We have an awful lot just on this mural board. Here at the top right, if you're not used to mural board, this button here gives you an outline. You can work your way through some of the resource sections here. This is also basically those who've attended Institute. We've used this same approach to share the material. So we have in the actual class model that Scott teaches, we have this various material. We have some videos from prior presentations in various topics. Then we actually took his course and chopped it up into, there's the case study. Well, here's this class in terms of how Scott teaches it. Here's actually the material from a student class, a campaign. We have a lot there. We also have over here this group. If you're not a member of this group, I'm going to give you the link here in a second. This is a place where it's like a private Facebook group And this is sort of the feed. And when you join, you can set up your settings to get email updates. If something comes in here, it'll be emailed to you and you'll give you a link back to this page. We put the material for the different sessions from our summer institute. We'll do the same thing for the winter institute here. The various meetings that we have upcoming. So this is one that we're in right now, but other ones that are coming up. And I'll talk about those more in a second. Another link to resources and the books and syllabuses and various other things we've done. And then we've got more than 200 people, I think, part of this group at this point. And so we strongly encourage you to join. If you're not in it yet, go over here. Let me just zoom out and zoom back in. Sorry about that. Right here, right below the questions, and there's that open button. Click that and it'll bring you right into the mural board. I'm sorry, not the mural board, our Bonner Learning Community group for teaching social action. And that's where we'll do all the announcements and that kind of stuff. If you haven't been in an institute yet, that's the best thing to do. Either the in-person one come up in Michigan or the one we're doing this winter. And then we have these meetups that we're doing. Just one other thing, just a sort of commercial for what's coming up. We've got another one of these coming up about once a month. So October 13th, November 10th. In between there, we've got the Institute at University of Michigan. I'll put a link here to register if you haven't seen that already, but that's in person. And then we've got at the end, towards the end of the semester, we get students from the various campuses who have campaigns to come in and do their campaign wrap. I think they get 2 minutes, Scott, each.
Yeah.
And they run through that, and you get to hear all these different campaigns, which is pretty exciting. And the students then feel, I think, they're part of something big, not just their campus. What we're going to do in a week or so, we're going to send out a survey. If you're teaching a class, we're interested in, what the class is, how many students, but also a list of your campaigns. One of the goals there is to then network campaigns if there's any overlapping topics. And then we have the Winter Institute coming up in January. There's no charge for any of these things. So it's just a matter of your time and effort. So that's kind of our approach right now. We are going to have these communities of practice. We'll send an email out about those. And that's really more of a conversation around how do we grow this as build a movement around this model. How do we get more people to be doing this? So things like people in social work who've taught it, maybe do a presentation at your next national conference or write some articles in the journals. And sort of, our goal is every semester has a social action course, so that a campaign started one semester and get picked up by the next semester if it's not been one. And that's sort of the reason why we want every semester. Is that good enough, Scott?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to say, maybe next time we'll have a larger conversation about that last question, because it's a really important one about, how do we sell this to high-ranking administrators? And that's something we deal with in the Institute. It's a a major, it has a good section of time we talk about it. It's definitely, I would say for the first 3 years on my campus, the administration had no idea about what was going on, that this was coming out of a class. And then once they did, we had to be just smart about it. And I'll tell you, I'll definitely let the next time, and during the Institute, of course, we'll talk about how to be smart about it and to work with the administration as much as you possibly can. And I think the key part is that, is that we're not, as faculty, telling them what to do. That's up to them. They're adults, that they're, it's obviously it's nonviolent. And as long as it's not breaking any human rights violations, we're not opposed to an idea, but it can come from any political perspective that the students feel that they're choosing. So I think that's a really important part, but I'll talk more about it maybe next time, but it's a really important question. I do want to invite people to this. We're the second one down on, we're forming a relationship with Campus Compact, Bobby and myself in this teaching social action group, and that they will be helpful in promoting the idea of social action within their 500 plus institutions. And the first thing one of these are doing is holding these Campus Compact communities of practice, which is a language we use. But if you look on the second one down, starting on September 22nd, and you can sign up right there by clicking on it. If you want to be in conversation, not just about what we're talking about is kind of the nuts and bolts of how to do it and kind of all the lessons that we're going to hear from Jazz and Chris and Teresa and more about how they're doing social action. And there are more faculty actually teaching it this semester as well. They just couldn't be on this call. They'll be on the future ones. But this idea is on September 22nd starting, and every 2 Fridays, we're going to be talking about strategies to grow the movement of teaching social action. So if you really are like a true believer and believe that higher education should have this as a possibility, please join that. It's another opportunity for you to be make a contribution in this movement as we try to mainstream it across. And the other thing is to, if you're not signed up, is to sign up for the training that's coming up on the 28th and 29th in Minnesota. It's our first in-person we've ever done.
Not Minnesota, Michigan.
I'm at Michigan. At Michigan, I apologize, at Michigan. And then at our Zoom meeting on January 3rd to the 5th. So sign up for those, and also invite your colleagues, both on your campus and beyond, who are interested in this, that you think that would be appropriate to attend, whether it be faculty or staff who can teach on a college. So maybe we could just hear, I don't know how to end, Bobby, on that, but those are my last things I want to say.
Well, I would be interested in we got the resource question. I mean, the best we can. Sources of different perspectives. So that's some of those other books. One of our intentions here is as more faculty teach this and teach it repeatedly, recruiting them in, so you all, to help grow it, and trying to find raising some money, and Campus Compact might be helping out to create some sort of faculty fellows who can do their own training and their own outreach, so that the folks leading this become lots more than. By the way, I work at a foundation. I've never led a campaign. I'm actually the tech support. I mess up sometimes even in that area, but so I'm not actually the expert here. But we need more people like Scott. We need more of you guys as you become comfortable with this to join in, sort of to expand the effort to sort of grow this. And there's really interest in diversifying the leadership of this. It's not going to be a sort of a top-down model. Somebody's got to get it going. So that's what we're up to now. But
any thoughts?
So that's the one about voices. Just one, the greatest challenge, Scott, you didn't really address that yourself, but I'd like to ask you that. And then the folks who are just getting started, I'm sort of curious about that too. But Scott, over the years, what was the biggest?
Yeah, for me is always, well, let me think. The question is always behind as I enter is, how can we get them like into the campaigns in a clear way that's not too complicated. So you can see that that's happening, but then to get them like when they come up against, because the first thing that's going to happen is that, if they talk to the decision maker, they're mostly likely going to say, no, we're not doing that. And then to get the students to believe that that's actually that's when the campaign starts, and to get them to engage in this longer process of ramping up a campaign, starting with, campaign, what I call campaign activities but move to campaign actions and start off at lower heat and moving into the kind of these higher heat kind of things. So I think getting students to believe in that process after they get told no is a challenge. It got easier as we got more wins, because they're like, oh, we know that the last 10 campaigns have won. So, but in those early days, it was to get them to kind of believe that this could actually work. I would say that's a big challenge.
Jazz, anybody else? Teresa, you want to add to that? Yeah, I know you're early in your class, but I'm sure curious what you see already or what you see ahead of you that might be challenging.
I think it's just keeping that momentum and keeping, myself accountable to doing the outside of the classroom nudges and making sure they're staying on task and being available to support them when they need it, and not just relying on class time to address all those questions. It's really being present often. And so making sure that I am prioritizing that while trying to balance all of these other things that I have going on in my life. So that's probably the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you want to add anything?
I'm still early days, so I don't think, you know, I'll probably have more to say next time.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
Well,
also
that,
really, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm also really excited that Teresa's inviting us to have this. She's kind of like the guinea pig that's doing this for our institution. And so I know that me teaching the same class that she's teaching, I'm really excited to learn from her and kind of be more invested in this project, because to me it makes more sense to go this route than what we're currently doing, which we've had some difficulty trying to get students really excited about doing what they're doing with that social action piece, working with the community, engaging with the community. And so, you know, that way we can help Teresa also, like, you know, pick up a lot of those pieces, because both of us, I mean, I know all that she's doing and everything on her plate. And so I know that I'm excited to help out, learn this information too.
Yeah.
Andrea,
One thing
Andrea,
I've heard a
I'm-
lot. Go ahead, for Scott.
Let me ask you a question, Andrea. Are you teaching the same class, but not social action?
Correct. So I'm teaching a section of the course that she is teaching as well, but she was able to go through the institute, and so
Yeah.
she's kind of like, yeah, they kind of allowed her to do the project because she's got the training already, and then they're gonna reevaluate and reassess. If that's my understanding, correct, Teresa? And please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, and what I think is interesting about those two things happening is that you kind of have a test case of like between social action, teaching similar material, and non-social action. And you'll have a chance to then say, this is, you know, we've already heard Teresa saying about the excitement. And if you're not seeing the same excitement teaching similar topics, it would be like, it'll give you guys more justification to say, hey, let's go this way with social action.
Right.
Absolutely. And I was excited to hear that Tom was incorporating this project, this model into his online courses, because we do currently have quite a bit of online courses. I currently teach a section of women and gender studies online. And so I would want to see where those intersects are and how I can incorporate this project as a possibility to assign my students through an online platform.
And we have just, you know, two professors who are doing it both online, asynchronous, and like they have actually put it on Canvas, so you could actually find it on Canvas. But I can connect you to them of their and to make it even more challenging than that, it's in a junior college, and so it's 12 weeks rather than 15 to 16 weeks, so even more challenging. But they've done so. And they're, I think, going to run it in the coming semester, so we'll get an idea of how it's going. But yeah.
One thing I want to just mention is that I've heard over and over from faculty, both things we've heard today. Number one, students who come into class, and this is including Scott, who helps recruit them, don't realize what they're getting themselves into. And initially they're nervous. Also heard pretty consistently, students, once they get going, are totally fired up, hanging around after class, talking their stuff through, asking questions with the professor. So both those things happen. So I think it's to be expected. You know, that they're not necessarily going to realize we're going to be doing real world stuff, no matter how often you say it, unless they've heard about people taking the class before. And then the second one is they tend to get fired up. They tend to get sort of into it. Like this isn't normal class. And, you know, they flip the model for how it's not the sage on the stage, it's the guide on the side, all that stuff that sort of happens in this model. Well, we initially said, 3 to 4, then we moved it to 4:15, and the rest of them will be 4:15. Just anybody can even if you haven't shown your face on the screen, anybody want to ask a question or make a comment? How many of you have started watching the US Open already this afternoon?
Don't say it.
Don't tell us. We don't like it.
I haven't seen it yet.
You guys don't know that, but Scott was a professional tennis player in an earlier career.
I see the poster behind him.
I know, right?
Yes.
Another lifetime ago.
Yeah. And then his son ended up coming late into it and playing at college as well. But he mentions it in his book. Very good. I should read his book, shouldn't I?
Yeah. Hey, Teresa, you get extra bonus points.
So don't hesitate to send an email. I think you all have Scott's email address. Don't hesitate to get out, reach out to him directly or myself. If you want actually help, reach out to him. I'll direct you to him or other resources, but I can't actually coach you. And I'll just let everybody, head off, and we'll be doing this again next month. And the other stuff you see that's coming up. And also on that Brown Learning Community, in that feed, you can post a question there as well. That way everybody in the whole network gets to see it.
Actually,
So don't
you got,
hesitate to use that as it's like a Google listserv.
I would just love to hear from just for the people who haven't spoken, because we still technically have 9 minutes, like Viviana and Bethany, just Katya, like, what did you hear? Like, did you get anything out of it? Was it helpful? It would be good just to hear. So Viviana, do you want us to say a couple of things?
Okay, I feel it's really helpful. Katya and I, the class that we teach is a civic engagement classes, and the students work with nonprofits for 2 quarters. So it's a 3-quarter class, and the first one is more the academic part, and the other 2, they work with nonprofits. Some of them are not necessarily policy changing projects, but I personally feel that we could, try to find more of those organizations that are dealing with policy changes.
Nice.
Katya, do you want to add anything?
Sure, I'm almost done reading the book, and I've actually already made notes in terms of guiding the class, and I haven't gone to the Institute yet. In thinking about that could be one of be a project is tackling a policy change. So the book has given me a lot of good ideas to frame it and work with them if that's something they want to do. I also teach a leadership course that I'm going to introduce the concept, because they also have to do a project. So this will be my testing the waters in my classes for this year before doing the Institute, to see what sticks and what I've been learning in the reading and in this community.
And I think, a good thing just to show students, I posted earlier, but I'll post it to everyone here. It's called Walk the Walk, and we'll talk a little bit about it. And if you haven't seen it, I just think it does a great job. It's called Walk the Walk. A documentary person came in, and over like 15 years, because he thought it was interesting what I was doing, and over 15 years, he took 3 campaigns that the students were involved in, and then highlighted the students. And so I think it would be, just if you show just a clips of those to the students, because I think, for them, if they don't know, like, what is, policy change, they might not quite get like what we're talking about. But if you show them clips of that, I think they'd get around like what it's up about, what it's up to. Cool. I'm excited to meet you both, by the way, and look forward to both of you participating in the institutes. One in Michigan and one over Zoom. So exciting.
Yes.
Yeah, Bethany, you want to say anything? Any thoughts?
I'm just absorbing it all and thinking about it.
Where are you at, Bethany?
I'm at Washington and Lee University, and we're thinking about civic identity, like a civic identity pathway, right? And so we're just at the beginning stages of thinking about this and doing this across the campus, a civic identity pathway that hits all disciplines, right? And so I'm just kind of like absorbing knowledge and ways of doing this within different disciplines. So,
hey, Bobby, maybe you could just say 2 seconds about why you were inspired, like when we met, because obviously you're thinking about, the various, pathways within civic engagement, and why social action was so important to you. Bobby, maybe say
sure. There was this, I'm going to put this up on the screen. Actually, this is the easiest way to explain it. There's this, so I've been doing this for a long time out of college, and we thought a lot of us in the beginning, thought, all right, students do direct service, then they'll organize direct service, and then they're going to get active and try to work on policies, because they'll realize you have to do that too, right? And it wasn't happening. And we just thought we'd natural. And this article came out, What Kind of Citizen? And it sort of suggested these 3 models of citizenship. And the person responsible, sees hunger and contributes to a food drive. Participatory helps organize a food drive. But the social justice, the justice-oriented, wants to understand the root causes and work on those. So that's both policy change, but also, activism of some kind. And this requires understanding structures and how to make change, and also a different sort of mindset around this. These first two are very collaborative, very friendly, safe in many respects for a lot of folks. And so I was frustrated that we didn't have in our work, we got as far as policy research and capacity building for organizations. We hadn't figured out, and we knew that the social change, the actual change part was there, but we didn't know how to do it. And we hadn't been doing that work. And when I met Scott, and it wasn't a course about it, it was a course where students do it. It was like, oh, of course, because all our stuff, we feel like the experiential model is critical to students actually learning something. And so it was just automatic at that point for me that we had to, and we're in a position where we can bring it not just to the Bonner schools, since there are a handful of Bonner schools following this model so far. I mean, it takes time to sort of grow this kind of thing. But, and WNL is one of the schools with the Bonner program. So I'm glad you're here, Bethany. But when we do something new like this, we've got to cast the net as broadly as possible. We have actually folks from England showing up and other places like that. So anyway, it was just kind of like a big, important missing piece. And if you think about having the whole spectrum of sort of exposing students, and there's other groups that have talked about the service wheel, and they talk about there's a pathways of service, I think is out of Stanford. I think now Campus Compact uses that. Those are all fine, but who actually has people doing it? And frankly, I've been on a number of schools in our network over the last 5-6 years. Have had pretty serious, maybe 10 years, student campaigns that were really, really poorly run, and they just blow up. And the issues are really important, but students aren't running them well. There's 12 pages of demands. They go right to the sit-in. I mean, it's just the whole thing was a mess. And I actually think institutions should want their students to get trained, not to be good citizens out in the world only, but also on their own institution. And because if they're doing something on campus, it's to make the campus better. And they may not have thought of everything, and the students have an idea of what they might want to do. And one example of that was at Villanova, one of the student campaigns recently, I think it was last spring or was it last fall, Scott? Yeah. One of the student campaigns was actually on the mental health services and that office was so happy to have students come with some demands because they hadn't had that interaction. They hadn't had that. So I think that there's a lot of value in this in lots of different areas, but that's the big one. We just didn't have it. And now collectively we have something to offer, and I think challenge students and really support students. I think this generation thinks about social justice in a more articulate way than once. I think they've all been motivated and idealistic. I think that's the nature of being young. But I think in particular, they're motivated to do something. They don't have the tools to bring about change.
Yeah, I want to uplift that. We've had some really successful demands on our campus over the years. For example, our Black student demands, and they got a department out of it, and some really great things. And then COVID hit, and students have regathered. Right, we're finally back, and the intention was to continue uplifting and seeing where we are with the demands. And the students who decided to continue having those conversations did not know how to do it and did it really incorrectly in terms of, well, now we want a leadership retreat, and made this huge deal. And we're like, well, yeah, no, we'll do a leadership retreat for but they had, my whole point is it was disrupted with the hand down from previous leaders. And so I'm seeing it needed more than ever, because there's some students make change on campuses, period, the end. That it's all about them pushing us to do better. And when they haven't been seen it modeled, didn't work with previous, the older, more experienced leaders, like so many things were interrupted. And so that's why I'm really excited is to I'm going to have to be even though I'm the dean of students and you're usually demanding me, I'm going to have to teach you how to demand things from me and what that really means, and where you can actually just start by giving me some history, or this is how it's affecting students. What do they need to do to actually be successful? Like they have.
And you're going to have to say no in order for them to have a real campaign, because it doesn't start if you say no.
I know. And it's just, And I was like, oh, these poor students. It really reminds me how it was interrupted.
Yeah, yeah.
I can also think of the opposite example very briefly. You know, I work on an initiative and I gave students money for a research scholarship in the summer. And I just sent an email saying, are you doing the research so I can pay you? And they turned all of that on a political campaign, you know, almost with, you know, signatures of the 4 students. I'm like, I just want to pay, you know, how we teach them also the opposite when it's not necessary to have that mistrust and that activism, that in this case, it's not necessary.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, we're past time, so we should say goodbye.
Yeah, we
but
like to end on time, more or
Yeah.
less.
next time we'll hear
Thanks,
from you.
everybody. It's great to see you in person in this way, and hope to see you next month, and we'll certainly see you at the institutes. Take care.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much.
Bye.